Turkey has always occupied one of the most consequential geographic positions on Earth. For centuries, it has stood at the crossroads of continents, empires, and trade routes, its fate shaped as much by outside powers as by its own ambitions. But today, something different is happening. For the first time in decades, the geopolitical landscape surrounding Turkey is shifting in a way that opens doors rather than closes them, and Ankara is stepping through those doors with quiet confidence. To understand Turkey's rising profile, we need to look at the world around it. Across Turkey's neighborhood, major powers are facing new constraints. Russia is deeply tied down in Ukraine, bleeding resources and leverage. The United States is deliberately reducing its global footprint, moving away from the intensive, hands-on approach that defined its presence in the Middle East and Europe for much of the post-Cold War era. Iran is weakened by internal turmoil, leadership uncertainty, and costly setbacks in its regional network. Israel is grappling with political crises at home and heightened conflicts abroad. In every direction Turkey looks, it sees not dominant rivals but vacuums, and this is exactly where Turkey's opportunity begins. Even before the Ukraine war reshaped Eurasia, Turkey demonstrated how effectively it could project influence. In 2020, its support for Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict fundamentally altered the balance of power in the Caucasus. The combination of Turkish drones, intelligence, and training enabled Baku to secure a historic victory. More importantly, that victory pushed Armenia and Azerbaijan away from Russia's orbit and drew them closer to Turkey. Now, with a long-awaited peace agreement between those two states on the horizon, Ankara is preparing to realize one of its most strategic goals: establishing a corridor that would give Turkey direct access to the Caspian Basin and further into Central Asia, an economic and geopolitical artery that could reshape the entire region's connectivity. At the same time, the Middle East has entered a period of profound transition. The escalation of conflict between Israel and Iran has led to the erosion of Iranian influence across several fronts. The degradation of Hezbollah's leadership and capabilities, followed by major blows to Iran's regional reach, created a domino effect, culminating in the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria. Sensing the shift, Turkey moved decisively. It backed a Syrian proxy faction that eventually took control of Damascus, positioning Ankara as the central power broker in a country long contested by global and regional players. This influence is not confined to the Levant. Relations between Turkey and major Arab powers, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt, have warmed dramatically. Meanwhile, Turkey has deepened its involvement in Libya, expanding both its military and economic footprint across North Africa and the Mediterranean basin. Piece by piece, Turkey is reasserting itself across a region where Ottoman influence once reigned, though this time through diplomacy, partnerships, and strategic opportunism rather than imperial conquest. To Turkey's north, Europe is entering a period of uncertainty. With Washington stepping back from its traditional security guarantees, European states are struggling to define a new defense architecture. Turkey sees this transformation as another opening. Ankara has reached out to Poland, itself a rising power within Europe, to coordinate on stabilizing Ukraine and exploring new security frameworks for the post-war era. At the same time, Turkey has accelerated its engagement in the Balkans. Its recent hosting of the Balkans Peace Platform in Istanbul, bringing together leaders and diplomats from across the region, signals Ankara's ambition to become the indispensable mediator in southeastern Europe. This is not a return to old ambitions, but rather a pragmatic response to a region in flux. All of this is happening while Russia's influence continues to wane. The war in Ukraine has dramatically reduced Moscow's ability to project power, particularly along its vulnerable southern flank. It has strengthened its naval presence, coordinated more closely with NATO forces, and positioned itself as a critical intermediary between Russia and Ukraine. At the same time, Ankara is deepening ties with Georgia, Romania, and Bulgaria, weaving a network of influence across the entire Black Sea basin. But a rising power needs more than just opportunity, it needs capability and ambition. Turkey's military is one of the largest in NATO, and its defense industry has become one of the most dynamic in the world, especially in drone warfare, naval systems, and aircraft development. Economically, Turkey remains constrained by inflation and domestic challenges, but its structural potential, its demographics, industrial base, trade position, and geographic leverage is unmatched in its neighborhood. Alone, these factors don't guarantee superpower status. but combined with the current geopolitical moment, they offer something Turkey has not had in decades: freedom to maneuver. For much of the last century, Turkey's geography was a burden, forcing it to balance between stronger powers. Today, that same geography is becoming its greatest asset. To the east, it can connect with the energy-rich markets of the Caspian and Central Asia. To the south, it can shape the future of the Middle East. To the north, it can influence the security structure of Europe and the Black Sea. Few nations in the world sit at the intersection of so many crucial regions. Even fewer have the ability to act across all of them at once. Of course, none of this means Turkey's rise is guaranteed. Internal political tensions, economic pressures, and questions about long-term governance could hinder its ambitions. Ultimately, no country becomes a great power solely because the world around it changes. It must also sustain the will and capacity to seize the moment. But the reality is clear: Turkey's moment has arrived. The surrounding powers are weakened, distracted, or disengaged. The geopolitical environment is shifting in Turkey's favor in nearly every direction, and Ankara is responding with a blend of military strength, diplomatic pragmatism, and strategic patience. A century after the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Turkey is once again stepping onto the global stage, quietly, methodically, and with remarkable timing. The next decade will determine how far this rise goes. But for now, Turkey stands as one of the most strategically positioned and politically active nations in the world, and its ascent may only be beginning.